Welcome back to Sprague Homestead on another Mailbag Monday. So it's been a busy couple of weeks around here. We've been a little light on videos. But hopefully that's going to change here in the next week or two. So if you've been making requests, hang in there. I've still got a whole bunch that I'm working on. But one of the first questions that we have for this week that I've been getting a ton of, and I've been getting it on Instagram, on Facebook, sent to my email, and on some of our videos here on YouTube, is why male rabbits aren't breeding. So I've seen a couple of different scenarios, or really a ton of different scenarios. Young bucks not breeding, experienced bucks showing no interest, and bucks that have been in with those that were breeding a month ago aren't breeding right now. And it's not that uncommon. The big thing here is probably going to be the molt. And almost every situation I've talked to everybody in, it turns out their rabbits are molting. For some reason, the weather has been kind of erratic this year and pretty much everywhere in the U.S. I don't know worldwide what everybody's doing, but we've had some pretty crazy weather. So molts have been either really, really dramatic, or they've kind of done this whole stop and start thing. The thing you have to remember about when rabbits are dropping that fur to grow in the next season's coat is that it takes a lot of nutrients and energy, right? So even though, bucks typically don't have a whole lot of problems getting the job done, if they've had a particularly hard molt or a long molt, or are getting a little older, say over 2 years old, and the molt's been a little tough, it can just be a nutrient issue. So what I would recommend is just go ahead and stop trying to breed them. Let them go ahead and work their way through that molt. Try and give them some vitamin and mineral support. You can start adding a little bit of calf manna in. Usually if they're not showing a lot of breeding interest, they're kind of feeling pretty lethargic. You can try giving a tablespoon, probably more like a teaspoon of calf manna every day to your breeding bucks if they're over 10 pounds, and just see if that starts to kind of help, because they burn a lot of protein when they're growing new fur. So you can try that. It can also be low drive. Remember that the daylight is starting to decline. And while most of your breeds really won't be too impacted by this, it can make some kind of an impact. So you can do a couple of things. You can try giving a teaspoon of black oil sunflower seeds onto their feed every night. You can also give them a little square of like wheat bread with some wheat germ oil on it, about a teaspoon of wheat germ oil every day. And that'll ramp up their vitamin B, which will usually get their mating drive to increase. So you can give that a try. But the biggest thing right now is probably just going to be that molt. I've noticed my boys are a little lethargic right now because some of them are really in a bad molt. I mean, it's coming off in clumps. I know that, molt takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks from onset to finish. So it does take a while. I know right now everybody's hot to trot to breed before the light gets so short and the temperatures get cold. But for some reason this year, it just might not be a good option. But you can try those things, either a little calf manna, some boss, or some wheat germ oil, and see if that gets them going. So this is one of my favorite questions, because we get this one every now and then, and that is, what can I do right now to start becoming more self-sufficient? We're not going to buy our new homestead until next year or the year after. There's a million things you can do. So what we did when we lived in our place in Jackson, and it was still 10 acres, but we weren't really doing the full-time homesteading thing. I started basically making a list of all the things I wanted to know how to do, right? So I learned how to do candles. I did some soap making. That's where I started learning how to can. Started baking my own bread, using a clothesline. And everybody who says, oh, you just throw clothes out on a clothesline. No, there's a learning curve when it comes to drying clothes outside, doing them nice, not getting a lot of fade, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things you can be doing. Read. If there are things that interest you, read a lot of these books. Particularly, I wish I had read a lot of books on regenerative agriculture, because that's something I'm starting to look at now. But right now we're so busy, I'm trying to fit that in the fall and the winter. So pick up books on the things that interest you, but start working on those things you can do from your house. If you're in an apartment, grow some herbs in some pots on a windowsill. You can, grow all kinds of stuff in buckets. They make all kinds of patio plant type stuff now. So you can get zucchini that will grow in buckets and corn and all kinds of stuff. Lots and lots of stuff. Figure out what it is that you want to do and what your version of self-sufficient and self-reliant looks like, and start there. Cut out your waste, make more dinner at home, all that sort of stuff. I mean, maybe you want to raise cows and you're in an apartment. That's probably not going to work. But this is the best time to start really researching what kind of cattle breeds do best with the kind of acreage that you're looking for. Really get an idea of what it is that you want to do and figure out how to make it work. This is an excellent time for research. So the next one is a debate that came up on one of the sustainability groups that I'm on Facebook. And there was this whole big debate, and apparently, and I had never heard this before, but apparently a lot of homesteaders can in nothing but quart jars. I was informed by several people that it's not even worth the effort to can in anything less than a quart. So that started the question, and somebody asked me, is it really worth the effort to can in anything less than a quart? We can very little in quarts. It's just Kanan and I. So for me, pints are like the ultimate. I don't want a whole bunch of leftovers, and if I do, like if I'm making shepherd's pie or something that I want a lot of leftovers, I can just open 2 pint jars, which is the same as a quart. The only thing I really ever can in my quart jars, I will do some quart jar meats for bigger stuff, like if we're having a family get together and I want to make pulled rabbit, chicken, whatever. We do some meats in quarts. I do some spaghetti sauces in quarts. And pie filling is about it. We don't use a lot of quart jars. Almost everything I do is in pints because it's just more efficient for us. We have no problem eating leftovers. That said, sometimes things get kind of out of control around here and things sit in the fridge too long. So I don't want to make anything in a quart jar. Like sloppy joes in the quart is great if you have kids. Or if you really like sloppy joes and don't mind eating them for a couple days. For us, I'd rather do it in a pint jar. Even then, it makes us a meal, and then there's still some left for somebody to have another sandwich with. So it's an interesting debate, and I'd love to hear what everybody else says about this, because really for us, and I use a lot of, half pints, obviously, for jams, jellies, that kind of thing. But for us, by far, the biggest amount is going to be in pints. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everybody else is doing quarts and I'm just not on top of it. But leave your vote down in the comments, because I really do want to hear what everybody else has to say about this, because it's kind of an interesting debate topic. So if you saw Kanan's Saturday video or watch us on watch our Facebook stuff or our Instagram feed, you probably have noticed we are building another building. I know Kanan's talked about it and other stuff, that we were building car pods that got scrapped. And now we're building a whole big building, which as of right now is most of the way done. We're waiting on finishing siding, a little plastic on the back, doors, gravel, and roofing. But it's getting there. So that led somebody to ask us the question of, what are our building plans for the homestead going forward? How much more stuff do we still have to do? Right now, the plan is nothing. The only things that we have left to do around here is to finish, because most of our buildings are in a position where they are usable but not done. So like the chicken house, one side of it's finished but not the other. I still don't have a roof peak on, trim, any of that. We still don't have the runs on them. The turkey house, the inside is pretty much done, but there aren't any runs finished. The waterfowl house has the area for the geese, and that's about it. So lots of stuff needs to be finished in the barns. We want to get them stained or painted, depending on what the siding is. There's still a lot of fencing to do around here. And then the rabbit barns still need peak, trim, paint, all that good stuff. So really, big buildings, we are hopefully done. There's always a potential for some mobile type pins, some smaller stuff, but the big projects should really be about finished. We had originally planned on trying to do an equipment shed. That's kind of gone out the window because where I wanted to put it, we're not zoned for it, and the county's not real cooperative at rezoning the one piece of property. So that should be about it. I mean, really, it's from here on out. What we hope is that it's just a whole lot of finishing work and getting all those projects buttoned up over the next year and a half, and then getting on to the fun stuff. All right, so the last question is about breeding goats because it is that time of year, and that is somebody was asking if it is better to hand breed or herd breed your goats. Now, if you're not sure what that means, hand breeding is actually waiting until the goat comes into heat and then taking her over to the buck. Or herd breeding is just where you have a whole herd and you turn the buck loose in there and let him do his thing. I'm not going to say either one is better than the other. It really does depend on your situation. If you only have a couple of goats, it might not be worth doing the herd breeding situation. Definitely with hand breeding, you get more accurate breeding dates, which is kind of nice. Because you can kind of calculate out, what the gestation is and when you think they're going to be born. So there is definitely good reasons to do that. Now for us, we have some pretty big herds. So we divide our herd up into 4 breeding sets. Every breeding set has at least, I think this year we're running at least 3 or 4 females. The big set has 8. And what we find is we take our bucks over and we turn them loose. So the bucks stay with the does during the winter months. We divide everybody out into their breeding sets. And then we turn the buck out. And we leave them for generally 60 to 90 days. So what happens for us is somewhere in that first 30 days, our does will come into heat. Usually the buck will settle them. If for some reason they miss, he's in there for them to come into heat again. On the years that I'm not real confident, like this year, my Nubian buck is getting a little bit older. So we're going to leave him in for a full 90 days this year. So that if he misses a doe in the first or second heat, he should be able to get him in the third heat. So there's definite, advantages and disadvantages. It's very hands-off the way that we do it. But there is a big wide variable of you don't know when they're going to have them. Most does, at least in our experience, most of our does will settle in the first 30 days. Very seldom do we get a straggler. And we've had enough goat babies now that you have a pretty good idea when they're getting ready to kid. They'll be bagging up. You'll start to see some discharge. So we have a pretty good idea. So we don't worry about it a whole lot. And we're also home all the time. So hand breeding is great if, like I said, if you're really looking for a more set date or, only have a couple of does or whatever. We like it. It mellows our bucks out a whole lot. Right now they're in the rut, so they're beating each other up because we have our boys set into pairs. They're beating each other up and peeing on everything, and they're kind of obnoxious. When we move them into the breeding sets with the girls, they mellow out considerably. They stop tearing stuff up. There's nobody to fight with. The screaming and yelling and hollering kind of dies down. So for us, we enjoy it more. The boys get a couple months to spend with the gals, and then about the time they're good and pregnant and getting a little cranky, we take the boys back out, put them in with whoever their pasture mate is, and it's usually a mellow situation. We don't have any problems. So kind of depends on what your situation is. I prefer the pasture herd breeding method, but to each their own. Okay, so that is it for this week for Sprague Homestead's Mailbag Monday. If you've got questions, leave them down in the comments. I will try and get back to you. You can always email me, Instagram me, kick me a message on Facebook. I get them everywhere. So, but yeah, on the quart jar thing, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. If anybody has anything to add to what I was saying, that is always appreciated. And we will see you next week. Happy homesteading.